welcome to Be Keto. So last week we had a quiz and we were able to kind of go through what's true and what's false and kind of get some answers to questions about our nutrition and our health. Well, today we're coming back to kind of find out why what is true and why what is false is false. So let's jump right into it. So our first question was, many people do not know that they have type 2 diabetes and are at increased risk to develop what's been called type 3 diabetes. So we found out that that was true. So first, let's look at this issue of being undiagnosed with type 2 diabetes. There's a large percentage of people that don't realize that they're suffering with type 2 diabetes. Because, for one thing, they go to the doctor and the doctor checks your glucose and your levels look fine. But the problem with that is that we don't know how long has it been that our insulin has been working and struggling to get that glucose out of our bloods and into the cells. So what you may find out, if they had measured your insulin, you would see that actually my insulin levels are through the roof. And that's why my glucose looks low. So it's important to recognize the insulin is really the drive of our glucose levels, and that's the real measure that we should be looking at. And often that's not what's being measured when we go to our doctor. So people don't know. So then how do we get from undiagnosed type 2 diabetes to type 3 diabetes? And what is type 3 diabetes? Well, in some literature, they're referring to Alzheimer's disease as type 3 diabetes. And that's because they're seeing that type 3 diabetes or Alzheimer's disease represents a form of diabetes that involves the brain. And they're seeing that there's an overlap of features with both type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. So again, there's still some discussion in the literature. It's controversial, but we are knowing that there's an association. So it's important to understand how insulin is playing into that. So if you look at Dr. Benjamin Bikman, I actually had a chance to watch an interview with him on the Biohackers Lab, and I'll put all of these links in the show notes. But to me, what was so helpful about that interview was, how do I know what my insulin level is doing from day to day? If that's what's putting me at risk for diabetes and even Alzheimer's, how do I keep track of that and make sure that I'm okay? And what he suggested was that actually measuring our ketones tells us how we're doing with our insulin. So if our ketone levels are high, then our insulin levels are low. And he was even suggesting that it doesn't require even 1.0 millimolars. You can have a 0.3 or 0.4 millimolars in your ketone measure and actually receive the benefits of decreasing your insulin. And low carb, healthy fats is actually a very important part of managing your insulin levels, because we know that if I take out the carbohydrates from my diet, then I'm lowering my risk for those big spikes. Without the carbs, I don't get the spikes in my insulin. And actually the healthy fats help dampen my insulin levels as well. So keep that in mind. So that was question number 1. Then we look at question number 2, where it says foods from the grain group along with vegetables and fruits are the basis of a healthful diet. Now that was false. Now recognize that that sentence came directly out of our dietary guidelines for Americans. And in fact, they even say, enjoy meals that have rice, pasta, potatoes, or bread at the center of your plate. 6 to 11 servings per day. That's a healthful diet. I don't think so. And what we're finding out is that science doesn't support or back up our dietary guidelines. In fact, what we know is that eating a high carbohydrate diet, as we just discussed in question number 1, actually increases our risk for insulin resistance, which has been described as a catalyst to diseases of civilization. Dr. Adam Nally refers to these diseases as diseases of civilization, or even going back to Dr. Bikman, he refers to the big 5. And what we're seeing is that insulin resistance is associated with body fat, so obesity, diabetes, which we just talked about, heart disease, cancers, and fatty liver diseases. So recognize that I'm not suggesting to you that high insulin levels necessarily causes these diseases. I don't know that we know that. But we do know that high insulin levels can actually increase our risk for these diseases or actually make these diseases worse. So it's something to pay attention to, and just to notice, how does it affect me when I have carbs in my diet? If you notice that you're getting groggy and you're not being able to think straight, you're hungry even though you're still in the middle of eating your meal, or you've just eaten and you're not being satisfied, all of those things can suggest insulin resistance. There's a lot of markers for that you can notice. Even skin tags, all of those things, darkened skin. Be aware of that. Those are things that can suggest that, wow, I'm in trouble here and I need to make some changes. And one way to do that is to change our diet. So very important. Okay, so number 3, the most important part of losing weight is to exercise or to burn off more than you take in. How did this happen? We said this was false. Well, I can tell you the answer to this question changed everything for me. Because when I read Gary Taubes' Why We Get Fat, that explained it all, because it helped me see that what I was experiencing was, I needed to pay attention to it. Because when I was exercising, I've done all kinds of programs trying to lose weight. And what I found was the more that I exercised, the hungrier I got, and the more I ate. So that makes it difficult to lose weight. So when you look at your own experience, you can see for yourself, it doesn't jive with what we're being told, the whole eat less, exercise more. And the truth is that, sure, we can go for a period of time eating less, but there's only going to be so long that we're going to be able to maintain that. Eventually, you're going to have Christmas, or you're going to have a birthday, or you're just going to have a craving, or you're going to be hungry, and it's going to be hard to resist eating, because our bodies are here to be nurtured. And so here's a quote from Gary Taubes' book, Why We Get Fat, and I think this sums it all up. If we restrict the amount of food an animal can eat, we can't just tell it to eat less. We have to give it no choice. Not only does it get hungry, but it actually expends less energy. Its metabolic rate slows down. How many of us can relate to that? I can tell you that happened to me again and again. But anyway, that was unquote. Back to the quote. Its cells burn less energy because they have less energy to burn. And when it gets a chance to eat as much as it wants, it gains the weight right back. So there we are with the yo-yo dieting and the back and the forth, and gaining more weight than we were trying to lose in the first place. So when you see in your own experience that the whole eat less, exercise more isn't working for you, or that you did it, you were successful for a period of time, and then here we are again, then you know that something isn't right about this picture, and you need to question it. Okay, number 4, too much cholesterol in your body is a risk factor for heart disease. We said that was false. Okay, so how is that false? Well, again, it goes back to what we were talking about before, about what medicine they measure. So what you'll see is that if it responds to the pharmaceutical world's medicine, then that's what we're going to measure. So here, if we are looking at LDL, well, actually statins do work very well at lowering LDL, at lowering that bad cholesterol. But they haven't really done a good job at raising our so-called good cholesterol. So the truth of the matter is that higher cholesterol, higher total cholesterol, actually is related to longer, healthier lives. So it's not the cholesterol that's the problem, despite what they've told you. The problem is what carries the cholesterol through our body, and that's where we get into the triglycerides. So that's when we talk about the fat that's in our blood. And when you have too much fat in your blood, absolutely that's a problem. So it's not the cholesterol that gets you into trouble. It's having too much fat in your body running through your bloodstream. So what we found out, remember they told us it's the fat that we're eating that's causing all the fat in our blood. No. What is the most common driver of high blood fat is excessive carbohydrates in your diet, not what they've told you. So again, just ask the questions. Just ask the questions. See for yourself what a difference it can make in your biomarkers, in your blood work, in how you feel. If you were to switch out maybe some fats instead of carbs. See how it goes. All right, let's look at number 5. A heart-healthy choice would be to switch from butter to a soft margarine made from vegetable oils. That is false. Okay. That quote came straight from the American Heart Association. And it's so interesting to me because who wins with that kind of statement? Because what we know is that margarine is a fake food. It is a manufactured food. It is an unsaturated fat that's turned into a saturated fat. They plug in hydrogen and make it so that it will harden at room temperature. Whereas butter is a natural saturated fat. It's a real food, okay? And it has a lot of nutritional value. So eating real food is going to make a big difference for you. If you can avoid those fake manufactured vegetable oils, you're better off in terms of good health. Now, let's look at number 6. Those who are skinny or of a normal weight are not at risk for insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. Not at risk. Okay, well, that was false. Now, what we know is that people, we see them. These are the people that I've been jealous of for all this time. I'm looking at them saying, how come they get to be so skinny? They're eating everything they want. And I eat anything, think about eating something, and I'm gaining the weight. Well, what science is referring to them as is Taubes, where they're thin on the outside and fat on the inside. What that means is that they actually have the same metabolic features as a pre-diabetic obese person. Okay, so they've got low muscle mass, they have inflammation within their body, they have high triglycerides, low good cholesterol, high blood sugars, and high blood pressures. So that is a suggestion that they're not healthy, even though they look healthy, they look skinny, they look good. But what's really going on is that they've got that little pooch that they've been working on, they can't quite get rid of it, and that little pooch is holding that visceral fat that's surrounding their organs. And so that's dangerous visceral fat. So don't be jealous. It's really recognizing that even though somebody looks good on the outside, they may be not as healthy as you, who may be overweight or may not look as healthy as that other person. Recognize that the difference is in where you're carrying that fat and what your biomarkers are saying, what your blood work tells you, what are your triglycerides looking like? What does your sugar look like? What are your insulin levels? All of those things matter in terms of measuring health. Okay, number 7. Most people are not able to maintain a ketogenic diet. This is false. Now, one of the things is that we look at the difference between a low-fat or low-calorie diet versus a low-carbohydrate diet. And one of the most recent studies out there from Virta Health, this was back in February of 2018, they had a clinical group of about 262 people, and they followed them over the course of a year, providing them with nutritional support and coaching. They were followed by physicians. They were following a low carbohydrate diet, and they were put into ketosis. And out of those 262 people at the beginning of the study, 218 of those continued in the study, maintaining that low carb diet and maintaining their ketosis and getting the benefits. So 83% retention in that group. What they found was those who were in the regular care, usual care, being followed by their regular doctors. Now, these were all people with type 2 diabetes. They did not have the benefits that those who were participating in the low carb group. In fact, it was their retention was lower, and they had no significant changes in their use of diabetic medications, no significant change in their weight, no significant change in their biomarkers. Whereas in the clinical group, all of those things showed significant change. So it was 30 pounds lost and maintained beyond that year. So they've put out more studies beyond the year, and they're seeing benefit continuing. People are being able to continue on with the low carb diet. So again, look for yourself. When you see studies like that, that's one study. I'm not saying that's everything, but I do want you to consider, oh, maybe there's something I could do here. Maybe it's easier for me to be able to go to McDonald's and just take the bun off. I can get the burger. I can get, a non-breaded, grilled chicken and not eat the bread. That's easier for me. And put a bunch of mayonnaise on there and I can enjoy it and have my body fed rather than hungry, counting calories and not being nurtured. Sometimes what you find is that you can do something. We can do anything for a short period of time, but the question is, can I maintain it? And what you hear again and again is that people following a low carb diet enjoy food again. Their relationship to food changes and they're actually able to maintain the benefits. So that was our quiz. And I think the point really is not to convince you of anything. The point is just to provide you a little bit of reasonable doubt. There's a lot of information out there, a lot to sift through, but the best source of information is your own body. So try things that are try it differently than what you've been told. Consider that maybe what I'm doing that hasn't been working, perhaps it's not about me being bad. Maybe the information is bad. So that's all I'm trying to suggest to you. So please check out the show notes below. If you liked what you saw, please like and also subscribe. I would love to see you again next week. Take care and be keto.